The frost on my kitchen window glittered like a cruel promise, catching the dawn light as I sat at the table, my untouched tea cold in its cup. 3 days ago, my daughter-in-law's voice had sliced through the phone line, sharp and final. "We think it would be better if you didn't join us this year, Eleanor. The house will be too crowded, and frankly, your old stories bore everyone." The words echoed in the quiet of my house on Maple Avenue, each syllable a small betrayal, unraveling the threads of family I'd spent decades weaving. At 70, I thought I'd known every shade of hurt, but this was new, a dismissal so casual it stole my breath. I stared at the photographs lining my mantel, Harold and me on our wedding day, Michael as a boy, the grandchildren's gap-toothed smiles. Was this what it came to? A life reduced to an inconvenience, my stories, my life, deemed unworthy? I was born Eleanor Jean Campbell in the spring of 1953, in Millfield, a town so small it barely clung to the map, nestled in the rolling hills of southern Ohio. The air always carried the scent of river mud and honeysuckle, and on summer evenings, cicadas sang louder than the church choir. My father's hardware store stood at the corner of Main and Elm, its bell jingling with every customer who entered, while my mother's piano lessons filled our parlor with halting scales and bursts of melody. We weren't wealthy, but our home brimmed with warmth, the clatter of supper dishes, the creak of the porch swing where my sister Barbara and I whispered secrets, the laughter that spilled from open windows. "A happy life needs 3 things," my mother would say, flour dusting her cheeks as she rolled pie crust: work that fulfills, love that sustains, and a flaky crust. I took her words to heart, learning early that nurturing others was a strength, a way to anchor the world. But not all lessons came gently. When I was 15, the summer of 1968, Millfield's peace shattered for me. My best friend, Clara, was my shadow, freckled, fearless, with a laugh that could charm the birds from the trees. We spent that summer biking to the river, our bare feet dangling in the current, planning futures as grand as the novels we stole from the library. Clara's father, Pastor Reynolds, was our church's pillar, his sermons a steady rhythm in our lives. So when he asked me to help with the youth group's fundraiser, I felt chosen, special. I didn't question the late evenings in the church basement, his hand lingering on my shoulder, his voice soft as he praised my dedication. Not until the night he locked the door, his breath hot against my neck, his hands no longer kind. I froze, my body a stranger, as he whispered I'd ruin my family if I spoke. Clara found me afterward, sobbing behind the hymnals. "You're lying," she hissed, her eyes wild with betrayal. "You're jealous of me, of my dad." She told everyone I'd tried to seduce him, and Millfield believed her. My parents, bound by shame and faith, sent me to live with my aunt in Dayton for a year. I returned quieter, my trust fractured, carrying a wound no one could see. That trauma taught me the sting of betrayal, the weight of being cast out. Yet it also planted a seed of resilience. In Dayton, my aunt, a no-nonsense schoolteacher, gave me books and a garden to tend. "You're not what happened to you, Ellie," she said, her hands in the soil beside mine. "You're what you choose to grow from it." I chose to grow toward light, toward love. When I met Harold Martin at 19, in the community college library, his kind eyes and shy smile felt like a safe harbor. Our collision over scattered books led to coffee, then walks through autumn leaves, then a life built on mutual care. Harold's steadiness, his belief in me, helped me reclaim my voice. We married in 1974, under an oak tree strung with fairy lights, my grandmother's lace dress soft against my skin. Millfield, softened by time, welcomed me back, not as the girl who'd been sent away, but as Ellie Martin, a woman forging her own path. Now, decades later, Diane's words stirred that old wound. To be uninvited, to be told I no longer fit, echoed Clara's accusations, the town's turned backs. But I wasn't 15 anymore. I'd survived loss, Harold's death 6 years ago, the slow drift of Michael's affection as his life grew glossier, more distant. I'd built a world here on Maple Avenue, rose bushes I'd planted with Harold, watercolor classes at the community center, children at Oakwood Elementary who lit up when I read to them. My cat, Fitzgerald, leaped onto the table, his purr a small anchor. "Well, Fitz," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "it's you and me this Thanksgiving." But as I spoke, a spark flickered, a whisper like Harold's voice, "Ellie, you've never been one to give up." I rose, my knees creaking, and moved to the dining room. The table, polished to a warm glow, had held countless Thanksgivings, Michael carving the turkey, the grandchildren fighting over candles, Barbara's pecan pie sparking laughter. Diane wanted a sleek, modern holiday, free of my boring stories. Fine. I'd create my own, a gathering not of obligation, but of choice, with people who valued me, stories and all. The idea felt reckless, then right, like sunlight breaking through frost. I grabbed a notepad, my hands trembling with purpose, and began to list names: Gloria from my grief group, Raymond from watercolor, Maria and Louisa from the community garden. My house would hum with life again, not as a shadow of the past, but as a bold new chapter. Outside, Millfield stirred awake. The river's scent drifted through the window, mingling with the promise of frost. I wasn't just Eleanor, the widow, the mother, the grandmother. I was Ellie Martin, a woman who'd survived betrayal, who'd built a home from love and loss, who still had stories to tell and strength to share. Diane's rejection wasn't the end. It was a beginning, a chance to weave a new tapestry, one thread at a time, with faith in myself and the community I'd chosen. As I sipped my cold tea, a smile broke through. This Thanksgiving, I'd show them all, including myself, what I was still capable of. The morning after Diane's call, I woke to a house too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your skin. Fitzgerald, my cat, was curled at the foot of the bed, his soft snores the only sound breaking the stillness. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the weight of her words, "Your old stories bore everyone," settling like damp river fog over Millfield's hills. Outside, the November light was thin, painting the oak tree in my backyard with a muted gold. I'd always loved this time of year, the way the world seemed to pause, gathering itself before winter's embrace. But today, the beauty felt distant, like a photograph I could see but not touch. I was 70 years old, and my own family had deemed me irrelevant. The hurt was a living thing, coiling in my chest, threatening to pull me under. I forced myself out of bed, my joints protesting as I shuffled to the kitchen. Millfield was waking up beyond my windows, the low hum of Mr. Lee's pickup as he headed to his hardware store, the distant bark of Mrs. Abernathy's terrier, the faint chime of the church bell marking the hour. This town, with its red brick storefronts and sycamore-lined streets, had been my anchor since childhood. Even after the betrayal at 15, when Clara's lies and Pastor Reynolds' violations sent me to Dayton, Millfield had taken me back, its rhythm soothing the jagged edges of my shame. Now, as I measured coffee grounds into the filter, I wondered if this place could hold me through this new wound. Could I find my footing here, or was I destined to fade into the margins of my son's life, a ghost in my own story? The coffee maker gurgled, and I sat at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around Harold's favorite mug, its chipped rim a reminder of his clumsy affection. Harold had been my rock, his steady presence a counterpoint to the chaos of my youth. When he died 6 years ago, pancreatic cancer stealing him in a matter of months, I thought I'd never recover. But I had. I'd joined a grief group, taken up watercolor and ceramics, volunteered at Oakwood Elementary. I'd built a life, not the one I'd planned, but one rich with small joys, the weight of a child's head against my shoulder as I read Charlotte's Web, the satisfaction of a well-thrown clay bowl, the laughter of friends over shared coffee. Yet Diane's rejection made me question it all. Was I fooling myself, clinging to a sense of purpose while my family moved on without me? I opened my notebook, the list I'd started last night staring back at me: Gloria, Raymond, Maria, Louisa, Tom Chen and his family, Leo from the bookstore. These were my people now, not bound by blood but by choice, by the quiet ways we'd woven ourselves into each other's lives. Gloria, with her raspy laugh and fierce loyalty, had held my hand through the first Christmas without Harold. Raymond, our watercolor teacher, saw beauty in my hesitant brushstrokes. Maria and Louisa's garden plots burst with color, their empanadas a staple at community potlucks. Tom Chen's parents had been our neighbors when Harold and I first moved to Maple Avenue, and Leo's bookstore was a haven where we debated Agatha Christie over tea. Could they fill the Michael-shaped hole in my Thanksgiving? I didn't know, but I was determined to try. I stood, the chair scraping against the linoleum, and moved to the dining room. The table, an antique from my grandmother, gleamed under a layer of dust I hadn't noticed until now. I ran my fingers along its edge, remembering the Thanksgivings it had hosted, Harold's toasts, Michael's earnest attempts to carve the turkey, Sophia and Lucas giggling over the wishbone. Diane had called this table too small, too old-fashioned for their Westlake estate's grandeur. I saw it differently, a witness to love, to resilience, to the messy beauty of family. I'd polish it to a shine, set it with my grandmother's china, and fill it with people who didn't find me boring. The thought ignited something in me, a spark of defiance that felt like Harold's hand on my shoulder. I called Gloria first, her number second only to Barbara's in my phone. "Eleanor, you caught me mid-scoon," she said, her voice warm despite the early hour. "What's up?" I took a breath, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess them. "I'm hosting Thanksgiving this year, and I'd love for you to come. Michael and Diane have other plans, and I want to do something different." There was a pause, and I braced for pity. Instead, Gloria's laugh rang through the line. "About damn time you threw your own party, Ellie. Diane uninvited you, didn't she? That woman's got the warmth of a frozen cod." I laughed, startled by the relief of being understood. "Something like that. Will you come? And maybe bring your Brussels sprouts gratin? Honey, I'm there. And I'll bring the good wine, too. This calls for a celebration." Next was Raymond, who answered with his usual understated calm. "A Thanksgiving dinner? That's a fine idea, Eleanor. I'm not much for cooking, but I can bring a centerpiece, chrysanthemums, maybe, from my garden." His enthusiasm, quiet but genuine, bolstered my resolve. Maria and Louisa were a double call, their voices overlapping with excitement. "Empanadas, Ellie, and our best Malbec," Louisa promised. "This is better than our usual takeout." Leo, flustered at first, accepted with a shy "I'd be honored, Eleanor. Maybe I'll bring some poetry to read after dinner?" Each yes was a brick in the foundation I was building, a bulwark against the loneliness threatening to swallow me. By noon, my list was nearly complete, only Barbara and a few others left to call. I stepped outside, the air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. Millfield streets were alive with the rhythm of late autumn, children biking past, their laughter sharp against the quiet, the distant rumble of a tractor in the fields beyond town. The river glinted through the trees, its surface a mirror for the sky's fleeting blue. This was my home, not just a place but a feeling, woven from memories of Harold's hand in mine, Michael's first steps, the community that had held me through joy and sorrow. Diane's rejection couldn't take that from me. I wouldn't let it. Back inside, I pulled out my grandmother's recipe box, its wooden lid worn smooth by generations of hands. The index cards, in her elegant script, held more than ingredients, they held stories. Her cornbread stuffing, spiked with sage and apples, was the one Harold requested every year. My mother's Parker House rolls, light as clouds, were a staple of my childhood Thanksgivings. My own cranberry relish, tart with orange zest, had been Michael's favorite as a boy. I traced the recipes, my fingers lingering on the stains and smudges, each a testament to meals shared, love offered. I'd make them all, not to prove anything to Diane, but to honor the woman I was, the life I'd built. As I began chopping onions for a test batch of stuffing, the phone rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen, and my heart stuttered. I wiped my hands, steadying myself before answering. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice tight, formal. "I wanted to check on you. Diane mentioned Thanksgiving." I kept my tone even, though my pulse raced. Yes, she was clear about her plans. "I'm fine, Michael. I'm hosting my own dinner." Silence stretched, then he said, "You're hosting? At the house? Alone?" The assumption stung, but I pushed past it. "Not alone. With friends who value my company. You're welcome to stop by for dessert, you and the kids. Around 7. He hesitated, then murmured, "I'll talk to Diane. We'll be busy, but, maybe." I hung up, my hands trembling, not with anger but with clarity. I didn't need his approval. I was creating something new, something mine. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, I sat on my porch, Fitzgerald purring in my lap. The stars were beginning to prick the sky, sharp against the velvet dark. Millfield's quiet wrapped around me, a reminder that I belonged here, not because of who I'd been to others, but because of who I was to myself. The hurt of Diane's words lingered, but it was no longer the whole story. I was Eleanor Martin, and I was still growing, still choosing light over shadow. Tomorrow, I'd call Barbara, polish the silver, plan the table. For now, I let the night hold me, its promises vast as the river flowing beyond my sight. The next morning, I woke with a purpose that felt like a pulse beneath my skin. The hurt of Diane's rejection still lingered, a bruise I could press if I chose, but I was done lingering in that pain. Millfield's dawn was soft, the sky streaked with pink over the river, the air carrying the sharp bite of November. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching a cardinal dart through the bare branches of the oak tree Harold had loved. Fitzgerald wound around my ankles, his meow a gentle demand for breakfast. "Patience, old friend," I murmured, pouring kibble into his bowl. The house on Maple Avenue hummed with possibility, its familiar creaks and shadows no longer a reminder of absence but a canvas for what I was about to create. I pulled out my notebook, the lists from yesterday now joined by new ones, table settings, grocery needs, tasks to prepare the house. The dining room, with its antique table and faded floral curtains, needed attention. I'd avoided it since Harold's death, the space too full of memories, his laughter, Michael's childhood chatter, the clink of glasses raised in toasts. But today, it called to me. I swept the floor, the broom's rhythm grounding, and polished the table until it gleamed like dark honey. The china cabinet, a wedding gift from Harold's parents, held my grandmother's plates, their delicate rose pattern untouched for years. I washed each one carefully, the soap scent mingling with the musty warmth of memory. These plates had held meals that fed more than bodies, they'd nourished bonds, stories, love. They'd do so again. Millfield's streets were quiet as I walked to Wilson's Market, the morning mist curling around the sycamores. The town felt alive in its small ways, the jingle of the bakery door as Mrs. Abernathy bought her daily croissant, the rumble of a delivery truck, the laughter of children biking to school. This was the heartbeat I'd grown up with, the rhythm that had held me through the betrayal at 15, when Clara's lies and Pastor Reynolds' violation had torn my world apart. Back then, the town's judgment had been a weight, but its familiarity, its river, its hills, its people, had also been a lifeline. Now, as I nodded to Dan Wilson behind the market counter, I felt that same lifeline pulling me forward. "Big plans, Eleanor?" Dan asked, eyeing my cart filled with turkey, cranberries, and pecans. "Thanksgiving at my place," I said, smiling. "The usual, just different this year." Back home, I called Barbara, my sister's voice a tether across the years. "Ellie, what's this about a Thanksgiving dinner?" she asked, her tone equal parts curiosity and concern. I told her everything, Diane's call, the uninvitation, my decision to host my own gathering. She said what? Barbara's indignation crackled through the line. "That woman's got no soul. You're better off without their sterile holiday." I laughed, the sound surprising me. "Maybe. But I need you and Bill there, Barb. Your pecan pie's non-negotiable." "Wild horses couldn't keep us away," she promised, then softened. "You're stronger than you know, Ellie. Harold would be proud." Her words landed gently, stirring the faith I'd leaned on since youth, aka you're stronger than you know, Ellie. Harold would be proud. Her words landed gently, stirring the faith I'd leaned on since youth, not in a church's dogma, but in the quiet belief that life's hardest moments could yield something beautiful if you dared to keep going. By afternoon, the kitchen was a chaos of preparation. I chopped apples for the stuffing, the knife's rhythm steadying my thoughts. The recipe was Harold's favorite, a mix of cornbread, sage, and tart apples, a dish that always drew groans of delight from Michael as a boy. As I worked, I thought of my youth, of the summer I was 15, when trust was shattered in that church basement. Clara's betrayal had taught me how quickly love could turn to venom, but my aunt's garden in Dayton had shown me how to root myself again. That resilience was why I stood here now, not broken by Diane's cruelty but building something new. The cranberries simmered on the stove, their tart sweetness filling the air, a reminder of my own blend of sharp pain and stubborn hope. Gloria stopped by with fabric swatches for napkins she was sewing, her presence a balm. "These colors scream autumn," she said, spreading out burgundy, gold, and green. "And everyone gets to keep one, a little piece of this day." Her eyes, sharp despite her 75 years, studied me. "You're glowing, Ellie. This dinner's more than a meal, isn't it?" I nodded, stirring the cranberries. "It's a declaration. I'm not invisible, Gloria. Not to myself, not to you, not to anyone who matters." She grinned, her raspy laugh filling the kitchen. "Damn right. Let's make it a party." Diane'll choke on her catered quinoa thinking about. As evening fell, I sat at the table, the house settling into its nighttime hush. Fitzgerald curled in my lap, his purr a soft vibration. I opened my gratitude journal, a habit I'd started after Harold's death to anchor myself. Tonight, I wrote, for Millfield's quiet mornings, for friends who say yes without hesitation, for the courage to choose joy. The act of writing felt like prayer, not to a distant God but to the strength I'd found within, the same strength that had carried me through Clara's betrayal, through Harold's loss, through this latest wound. I thought of my aunt's words, "You're what you choose to grow from it." I was choosing to grow a table full of love, a house full of laughter, a heart full of purpose. The phone buzzed, Sophia's name lighting up the screen. My granddaughter's text was hesitant. "Hi Grandma. Mom said you're not coming for Thanksgiving. Are you sick?" The lie Diane had spun stung, but I typed back carefully, unwilling to poison Sophia's trust. "Not sick, sweetheart. Your parents are hosting work friends, so I'm having my own dinner with friends. I miss you and Lucas. You're always welcome here." I added a heart emoji, hoping it bridged the distance. No reply came, but that was okay. The seed was planted, and I'd learned long ago that growth took time. I stepped onto the porch, the night air cool against my skin. Millfield stars glittered above the river, each a tiny defiance against the dark. I thought of Harold, his dimpled smile, his belief that life's beauty was worth fighting for. "Ellie," he'd say, "you're tougher than you think." I was proving him right, one recipe, one invitation, one small act of courage at a time. This Thanksgiving wouldn't erase the past, Clara's betrayal, Harold's absence, Michael's distance, but it would write a new chapter, one where I was the author, not the footnote. As I turned back inside, the warmth of my home wrapped around me, a promise that tomorrow, and all the days after, would be mine to shape. The days before Thanksgiving unfolded like a quilt, each task a stitch binding my resolve. Millfield's November deepened, the air sharp with the scent of frost and wood smoke, the river a silver thread weaving through the hills. My house on Maple Avenue buzzed with preparation, its rooms no longer silent but alive with purpose. The dining room table, now polished to a warm sheen, stood ready for my grandmother's china, Gloria's autumn napkins folded neatly beside each place setting. Fitzgerald prowled the countertops, his curiosity a quiet companionship as I tested recipes and rearranged chairs. Diane's words, "Your old stories bore everyone," still echoed, but their sting was fading, replaced by a growing certainty that I was crafting something real, something mine. Mornings began early, the dawn light filtering through the floral curtains Harold and I had hung decades ago. I'd wake to Fitzgerald's insistent pause, make coffee, and sit by the kitchen window, watching Millfield stir. The cardinals at Harold's feeders were bolder now, their red wings a flicker of defiance against the graying sky. I'd always found solace in these small rituals, a rhythm that connected me to the girl I'd been before betrayal broke me open at 15, to the woman who'd rebuilt herself beside Harold, to the widow who'd learned to carry grief without letting it define her. Today, that rhythm felt like a hymn, each note building toward the gathering I was creating, a Thanksgiving not of obligation, but of chosen connection. I spent the morning at the community center, my watercolor class a welcome pause. The room smelled of paint and old wood, sunlight slanting through tall windows onto our easels. Raymond, our instructor, moved among us, his quiet encouragement a steady presence. I was working on a landscape, the river at dusk, its surface catching the last light. "There's a new confidence in your lines, Eleanor," Raymond said, pausing beside me. Something shifted. I smiled, dipping my brush in indigo. "I'm hosting Thanksgiving this year. It's waking me up." He nodded, his eyes crinkling. "Good. Art and gatherings, they're both about making something beautiful from what's in front of you." His words stayed with me, a reminder that this dinner was more than a meal, it was a creation, a reclaiming of my place in the world. Back home, I tackled the menu with a focus that surprised me. I needed dough for Parker House rolls, the recipe my mother's, its buttery scent pulling me back to childhood Thanksgivings when Barbara and I would sneak warm rolls before dinner. The cranberry relish simmered, bright with orange zest, a nod to Michael's boyhood favorite. For the stuffing, I diced apples, their crisp tang mingling with sage, a dish Harold had loved for its balance of sweet and savory. As I cooked, I thought of the summer I was 15, when Clara's betrayal and Pastor Reynolds' violation had left me hollow. My aunt in Dayton had taught me to cook that year, her kitchen a sanctuary where I could focus on measurements and flavors instead of shame. "Food's a way to love people," she'd said, showing me how to roll dough. "Even when they don't deserve it." I was cooking now for people who did deserve it, who saw me not as a burden but as a gift. Leo from the bookstore dropped by in the afternoon, a stack of poetry books under his arm. "Thought we could read some after dinner," he said, his cheeks pink with shyness. "Maybe Frost or Whitman, something about gratitude." I took the books, touched by his thoughtfulness. "That's perfect, Leo. Harold and I used to read aloud in the evenings. It'll feel like bringing him back, just a little." Leo's eyes softened. "You're doing something special here, Eleanor. I can feel it." His words landed like a blessing, reinforcing the faith I'd carried since youth, not in a distant deity, but in the power of connection, of creating spaces where people could be fully themselves. By evening, the house was a tapestry of scents, roasting pecans, simmering cider, the earthy warmth of baked cornbread. I sat at the kitchen table, my gratitude journal open, and wrote, for the river's quiet beauty, for Leo's poetry, for the strength to keep creating. The practice was a lifeline, a way to name the good amidst the pain of Diane's rejection, of Michael's silence. I thought of my aunt's garden, where I'd learned to trust in growth after betrayal. That trust was why I could stand here now, planning a dinner for friends who'd become family, refusing to let exclusion define me. The phone rang, startling Fitzgerald from his perch on the windowsill. It was Lucas, my grandson, his voice hesitant but warm. "Hi, Grandma. Sophia said you're having your own Thanksgiving. Can I come for cheesecake?" My heart swelled, the simplicity of his request cutting through the complexity of adult hurts. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, keeping my tone light. "Friday, maybe? I'll save you a slice. And bring your stories, I want to hear about that space camp you loved." He laughed, a sound so like Michael's at that age. "Deal. Mom says we're busy Thursday, but I'll try. Love you." "Love you too, Lucas." The call ended, and I sat there, tears pricking my eyes, not of sadness, but of gratitude for this small thread of connection, fragile but real. I stepped outside, the night air cool and clear, Millfield stars a scattering of light above the river. The town slept, its houses glowing softly, each a story of love and loss, of resilience and hope. I thought of Harold, his dimpled smile, his unwavering belief in me. "You're my anchor, Ellie," he'd say, his hand warm in mine. I was anchoring myself now, not in his presence but in the life I'd built, in the community I'd chosen. Diane's words had tried to cut me loose, but they'd only pushed me to root deeper. This Thanksgiving would be a testament to that, a table set with love, laughter, and stories that mattered, not because they were new, but because they were mine. Back inside, I checked my lists, the practical tasks grounding me: iron the tablecloth, polish the silver, arrange Raymond's chrysanthemums. Each step was a choice, a refusal to be diminished. I thought of the girl I'd been at 15, betrayed and banished, and the woman I'd become, scarred but whole, wounded but strong. This dinner wasn't just about feeding people, it was about feeding my soul, about proving that even at 70, I could still grow, still create, still belong. As I turned off the kitchen light, Fitzgerald following me to bed, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. Tomorrow would bring more preparations, more connections, more steps toward the light. For now, I was enough, and that was everything. The week before Thanksgiving, Millfield wrapped itself in a quiet chill, the kind that made your breath visible and turned the river's edge to frost. My house on Maple Avenue was a hive of activity, each corner humming with the promise of the gathering I was building. The dining room, once a silent shrine to past holidays, now felt alive, its table set with my grandmother's china, the silver polished to a soft gleam. Gloria's napkins, in rich burgundy and gold, lay folded like small gifts, and Raymond's chrysanthemums waited in a vase, their petals a burst of autumn against the faded curtains. Fitzgerald, ever the overseer, perched on the windowsill, his green eyes tracking my movements as I moved from kitchen to living room, my lists guiding me like a map through uncharted territory. Diane's words, "Your old stories bore everyone," still lingered, but they were losing their power, drowned out by the rhythm of my purpose. Mornings were my sanctuary, the dawn light filtering through the sycamores, casting long shadows across the kitchen. I'd sip coffee from Harold's chipped mug, watching the cardinals at the feeders, their wings a fleeting red against the gray. Millfield stirred slowly, the clatter of Mr. Lee's truck, the soft chime of the church bell, the laughter of children racing to the school bus. This town had been my refuge since childhood, its rhythms a balm after the betrayal at 15, when Clara's lies and Pastor Reynolds' violation had shattered my trust. That wound had taught me resilience, a lesson I leaned into now as I faced Diane's rejection. I wasn't the girl who'd been sent away, nor the widow defined by loss. I was Eleanor Martin, 70 years old, and I was choosing to create joy where others saw only absence. Today was ceramics class at the community college, a ritual I'd come to cherish. The studio smelled of clay and glaze, its tables cluttered with half-formed bowls and mugs. I was working on a platter for the Thanksgiving turkey, an ambitious piece for my novice hands. The clay was cool, yielding as I shaped an oval, pressing maple and oak leaves into the rim to leave their delicate impressions. "This is stunning, Eleanor," my instructor said, her voice warm with surprise. "There's a story in this piece." I smiled, smoothing the edges. "It's for a special dinner. A new kind of Thanksgiving." She nodded, understanding more than I'd said. The platter wasn't just clay, it was a declaration, a tangible piece of the life I was reclaiming. Back home, the kitchen was a symphony of scents, roasting pecans for the sweet potato casserole, simmering cider for the apple mold, the earthy warmth of cornbread for Harold's stuffing. I moved with a confidence I hadn't felt in years, each recipe a thread connecting me to the women who'd shaped me, my mother, my aunt, my grandmother. Their hands had kneaded this dough, stirred these sauces, and in doing so, they'd taught me that love could be poured into food, into spaces, into people. I thought of my aunt's kitchen in Dayton, where I'd learned to bake after Clara's betrayal. "You're stronger than your pain," she'd said, passing me a rolling pin. That strength was why I stood here now, not defeated by Diane's cruelty but building a table for those who saw me. Maria and Louisa stopped by with a bottle of Malbec and a tray of empanadas for the dinner. "Not traditional, maybe," Maria said, her eyes sparkling, "but wait till you taste them." Louisa hugged me, her warmth a contrast to the November chill. "This dinner's going to be magic, Ellie. We're honored to be part of it." Their enthusiasm was a gift, a reminder that this gathering was bigger than my hurt, it was a celebration of connection, of community. We sat at the kitchen table, sampling the empanadas, their flaky crust and spicy filling a perfect complement to my cranberry relish. "To chosen family," Louisa toasted, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers, the words settling deep in my heart. Evening brought a call from Barbara, her voice thick with emotion. "Ellie, I've been thinking about you all day. This dinner, it's brave." I wish I could take Diane's words and shove them back down her throat. I laughed, the sound easing the tension in my chest. "I'm okay, Barb." "Really?" This isn't about proving her wrong. It's about proving myself right. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're doing Mom proud. She'd love this, you know, her girl filling a table with love." The mention of our mother, with her flour-dusted cheeks and wisdom about pie crusts, brought tears to my eyes. "I hope so," I whispered. "Just bring that pecan pie, okay?" In my gratitude journal that night, I wrote, "For clay that holds a story, for Maria and Louisa's laughter, for the faith that keeps me moving." Faith wasn't a church for me anymore, not after Pastor Reynolds, but a quiet trust in life's capacity to surprise, to heal. I thought of the girl I'd been at 15, weeping in my aunt's garden, and the woman I'd become, scarred but whole. Diane's rejection had tried to shrink me, but it had only pushed me to expand, to create a space where I belonged. Lucas's call, Sophia's text, they were small lights in the dark, reminders that my grandchildren still saw me, even if their parents didn't. I stepped onto the porch, the night air crisp, Millfield stars a canopy above the river. The town was still, its houses glowing like lanterns, each holding its own joys and sorrows. I thought of Harold, his hand in mine during our evening walks, his voice promising we'd face anything together. "You're my home, Ellie," he'd say, his dimple flashing. I was my own home now, rooted in this place, in these people, in the strength I'd cultivated through decades of love and loss. This Thanksgiving would be a testament to that, a table set not to replace the past but to honor the present, to celebrate the woman I was still becoming. Back inside, I checked my lists, buy candles, clean the guest room, confirm with Tom Chen. Each task was a step toward something greater, a refusal to be erased. I thought of my aunt's words, "You're what you choose to grow from it." I was choosing to grow a gathering that would echo Millfield's best days, its potlucks, its church suppers, its moments of coming together. As I climbed into bed, Fitzgerald curling against my side, I felt a peace I hadn't expected. The hurt of Diane's words was still there, a quiet ache, but it was no longer the whole story. I was writing a new one, plate by plate, story by story, and it was beautiful. The air in Millfield grew sharper as Thanksgiving neared, the river's surface glazing with the first hints of ice. My house on Maple Avenue was a beacon of warmth, its windows glowing against the early dusk, the scent of cinnamon and sage spilling from the kitchen. The dining room stood ready, my grandmother's table extended with a card table to seat the growing guest list, Gloria's napkins a vibrant patchwork of autumn hues. Fitzgerald prowled the edges of my preparations, his tail flicking as I arranged Raymond's chrysanthemums and polished Mrs. Abernathy's silver candelabra, a last-minute loan she'd insisted on. "They deserve a proper celebration," she'd said, her voice crackling with pride. Diane's rejection, "Your old stories bore everyone," was a distant echo now, its power diluted by the life I was building, plate by plate, guest by guest. Mornings were my anchor, the dawn light soft through the sycamores, Millfield waking with its familiar cadence, the clink of milk bottles on porches, the low hum of Tom Chen's car as he left for work, the church bell's faint toll. I'd sip coffee at the kitchen window, Harold's chipped mug warm in my hands, watching the cardinals dart through the oak tree's bare branches. This ritual grounded me, connecting me to the girl who'd survived betrayal at 15, to the wife who'd built a life with Harold, to the widow who'd found purpose in small acts of creation. Today, it felt like a prayer, a quiet affirmation that I could shape joy from pain, that I was more than the sum of others' dismissals. I spent the morning at Oakwood Elementary, reading to the first graders, their wide eyes and eager questions a balm. "Mrs. Martin, why do you always smell like flowers?" little Amara asked, her hand patting my silver hair. "Because I'm secretly a garden," I teased, making her giggle. The classroom, with its bright posters and tiny chairs, was a world apart from the sleek minimalism of Michael and Diane's Westlake estates. Here, my stories, of Harold's snowstorm treks, of Michael's tree-climbing mishaps, were treasures, not burdens. As I read The Giving Tree, I thought of the summer I was 15, when Clara's lies and Pastor Reynolds' violation had stripped me bare. My aunt in Dayton had given me stories then, novels and histories, to rebuild my sense of self. "You're not your wounds," she'd said. "You're what you make with them." I was making a Thanksgiving now, a gift for myself and others, a refusal to be erased. Back home, the kitchen was a whirlwind of preparation. I roasted the turkey, its golden skin crackling, and baked the sweet potato casserole, its pecan topping a nod to Barbara's pie. The cornbread stuffing, rich with apples and sage, filled the house with Harold's favorite scent. As I stirred the cranberry relish, its tart brightness a memory of Michael's childhood delight, I felt a pang, not for what I'd lost, but for what I was reclaiming. This wasn't about replacing the past, it was about honoring it while creating something new. I thought of my aunt's kitchen, where I'd learned to transform pain into sustenance. Food is love, she'd said, and I was pouring love into every dish, for friends who saw me, for a community that held me. Raymond arrived in the afternoon, his arms full of oak leaves and bittersweet berries to supplement the centerpiece. Thought these would add a wild touch, he said, his quiet smile warming the room. We arranged the elements together, the leaves rustle a soft counterpoint to the kitchen's hum. This dinner's going to be something, Eleanor, he said, his eyes meeting mine. You're bringing people together in a way that matters. His words echoed the faith I'd carried since youth, not in a church's rules, but in the power of shared moments, of tables where everyone belonged. I hope so, I said, brushing a leaf from my sleeve. It's what I've always wanted. Evening brought a surprise, a text from Michael. Hi Mom. Sophia and Lucas keep asking about you. We might stop by for dessert Thursday, if that's still okay. My heart stuttered, a mix of hope and caution. This wasn't the warm invitation I'd once craved, but it was a crack in the wall between us, a sign that my grandchildren's love still reached me. I typed back, of course, dear. 7 o'clock. There'll be plenty. I hesitated, then added, I'd love to see you all. No reply came, but I didn't need one. The door was open, and that was enough for now. In my gratitude journal, I wrote, for children's questions, for Raymond's leaves, for the possibility of connection. The act was a lifeline, a way to name the light amidst the shadows of Diane's cruelty, of Michael's distance. I thought of my aunt's garden, where I'd learned to trust in growth after betrayal. That trust was why I could stand here, setting a table for friends who'd become family, refusing to let rejection define me. Lucas's call, Sophia's text, Michael's tentative message, they were threads in a tapestry I was still weaving, one of resilience and hope. I stepped onto the porch, the night air cold, Millfield stars sharp above the river. The town was a constellation of glowing windows, each a story of struggle and survival. I thought of Harold, his hand steady in mine, his voice promising we'd weather any storm. You're my light, Ellie, he'd say, his dimple flashing. I was my own light now, shining through the choices I made, the people I welcomed, the life I built. This Thanksgiving would be a testament to that, a table set with love and laughter, a space where my stories, old and new, found a home. Back inside, I checked my lists, light the candles, set out the cider, confirm with Leo about his poetry reading. Each task was a step toward something greater, a refusal to be diminished. I thought of the girl I'd been at 15, broken but not destroyed, and the woman I'd become, scarred but strong, wounded but whole. This dinner was my offering, not just to my guests but to myself, a proof that at 70, I could still create, still belong, still shine. As I turned off the kitchen light, Fitzgerald trailing me to bed, I felt a quiet certainty settle over me. The hurt of Diane's words was a fading echo, drowned out by the song of my own becoming. Tomorrow, I'd keep building, one dish, one smile, one story at a time. The day after Thanksgiving, Millfield woke to a gentle frost, the river's edge sparkling under a low sun. My house on Maple Avenue was quiet, the dining room still holding the echo of last night's laughter, the table cluttered with empty wine glasses and crumpled napkins. Fitzgerald prowled among the leftovers, his nose twitching at the scent of turkey tucked away in the fridge. I stood at the kitchen window, Harold's chipped mug warm in my hands, the cardinals at the feeders a flicker of red against the gray. The success of the dinner, a tapestry of stories, warmth, and chosen family, lingered like a melody, softening the ache of Diane's rejection. Her words, your old stories bore everyone, were now just a faint ripple, overtaken by the reality I'd created, a gathering that had filled my home and heart. Morning brought a soft reckoning. I swept the dining room, the broom's rhythm a counterpoint to my thoughts. Yesterday had been a triumph, not because Michael and the grandchildren came, but because I'd proven to myself that I could build joy without them. Gloria's toast, Leo's poetry, Maria and Louisa's empanadas, Barbara's fierce pride, they'd woven a new kind of family, one that saw me as I was, not as a burden or a relic. Yet Michael's quiet "this was good, Mom" and Lucas's "your stories are the best," Grandma, had cracked open a door I'd thought closed. Diane's tight smile and clipped words hadn't softened, but Sophia's hug and whispered apology held promise. I wasn't sure what came next, but for the first time in weeks, I felt ready to face it. I spent the morning tidying, washing my grandmother's china with care, each plate a reminder of the love it had held. The act was meditative, connecting me to the girl who'd survived betrayal at 15, to the wife who'd laughed with Harold over spilled gravy, to the woman who'd dared to host this dinner. I thought of that summer in 1968, when Clara's lies and Pastor Reynolds' violation had sent me to Dayton, my trust shattered. My aunt's kitchen had been my refuge then, her lessons in baking a way to rebuild. "You're what you choose to grow from," she'd said, her hand steady as we kneaded dough. That wisdom had carried me through Harold's death, through Michael's distance, through Diane's cruelty. Yesterday, I'd chosen to grow a table full of connection, and it had changed me. Barbara called at noon, her voice bright with leftover joy. "Ellie, that was one for the ages," she said, laughing. "I haven't seen you shine like that since Harold was alive." "And Michael showing up?" "That's something." I smiled, stacking plates in the cabinet. "It's a start, Barb. I didn't need them there, but I'm glad they came. Sophia and Lucas, they're still mine, in their way." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're everybody's, Ellie." "That room last night? It was full of people who'd walk through fire for you." Her words landed like a gift, a reminder that my worth wasn't tied to one family's approval but to the community I'd built. In the afternoon, I walked to the river, the air sharp with the scent of pine and frost. Millfield's streets were hushed, the post-Thanksgiving calm settling over the town like a blanket. The river flowed steadily, its surface catching the sun in fleeting glints. I sat on a bench, the same one where Harold and I used to share coffee on autumn mornings, and let the quiet hold me. I thought of the girl I'd been at 15, betrayed and banished, and the woman I'd become, scarred but resilient, wounded but whole. Diane's rejection had tried to shrink me, but it had only pushed me to expand, to create a space where I belonged. Lucas's hug, Sophia's whisper, Michael's tentative step toward me, they were signs that the bridge between us wasn't gone, just waiting to be crossed. Back home, I found a note slipped under the door, Leo's neat handwriting on bookstore stationery. "Eleanor, last night was a gift. Your stories, your warmth, they're what make Millfield home. Thank you. Leo." I pressed the note to my chest, tears pricking my eyes. This was what I'd fought for, not just a meal but a moment where everyone felt seen, valued, connected. I added it to my gratitude journal, writing, for quiet mornings to reflect, for Barbara's love, for Leo's words, for the strength to keep building bridges. The practice was a lifeline, a way to name the light amidst the shadows of loss and rejection. I thought of my aunt's garden, where I'd learned to trust in growth, and of Harold's belief in me, his dimple flashing as he called me his light. The phone buzzed, Sophia's name lighting up the screen. "Hi Grandma. Thanks for yesterday. I loved your stories. Can I come over soon? Just me and Lucas?" My heart swelled, the simplicity of her request a balm. "Anytime, sweetheart," I typed back. "How about Saturday? I'll make hot cocoa and we'll tell more stories." Her reply was instant, "Yes. Love you." I smiled, the warmth spreading through me. This was the future I'd been weaving toward, not a return to the past, but a new chapter, one where my grandchildren could know me as I was, not as Diane's narrative framed me. I stepped onto the porch, the evening air cool, Millfield stars emerging above the river. The town glowed softly, each house a story of struggle and hope, of love and resilience. I thought of Harold, his hand in mine, his voice promising we'd face anything together. "You're tougher than you think, Ellie," he'd say. I was proving him right, one dinner, one note, one text at a time. Diane's rejection had been a wound, but it had also been a catalyst, pushing me to create a Thanksgiving that honored my past while embracing my present. I was Eleanor Martin, 70 and still growing, still shining, still home. Back inside, I began planning Saturday's visit with Sophia and Lucas, hot cocoa, oatmeal cookies, a stack of Harold's old adventure books to read together. Each choice was a thread in the tapestry I was weaving, a life rich with connection, purpose, and joy. The hurt of Diane's words was a faint scar now, a reminder of what I'd overcome. As I turned off the kitchen light, Fitzgerald curling at my feet, I felt a peace deeper than any I'd known. This was my story, and I was writing it with every step, every smile, every open door. Tomorrow, I'd keep weaving, and it would be beautiful. The weekend after Thanksgiving, Millfield settled into a quiet rhythm, the river's frost giving way to a tentative thaw under a pale November sun. My house on Maple Avenue held the soft glow of the holiday's aftermath, the dining room now cleared but still warm with the memory of laughter, clinking glasses, and shared stories. Fitzgerald sprawled across the kitchen counter, his tail flicking as I tidied the last of the leftovers, turkey for sandwiches, a slice of Barbara's pecan pie saved for Sophia and Lucas's visit. Diane's rejection, your old stories bore everyone, was a distant murmur now, its power dissolved by the triumph of my Thanksgiving, a gathering that had woven chosen family into a tapestry of belonging. The unexpected presence of Michael, Diane, and the grandchildren had been a fragile gift, but it was Sophia's text, promising a visit, that lit the path forward. Morning came gently, the dawn light filtering through the sycamores, casting dappled shadows across the kitchen. I sipped coffee from Harold's chipped mug, watching the cardinals at the feeders, their red wings a quiet defiance against the gray. Millfield stirred beyond my window, the crunch of leaves under a neighbor's rake, the faint hum of a car on Main Street, the church bell's steady toll. This ritual tethered me to the girl who'd rebuilt herself after betrayal at 15, to the wife who'd cherished Harold's laughter, to the woman who'd found strength in creating a new kind of Thanksgiving. Today, it felt like a bridge, connecting the past to the future I was shaping with my grandchildren, one story at a time. I spent the morning preparing for Sophia and Lucas's visit, a flutter of anticipation in my chest. I baked oatmeal cookies, their cinnamon warmth filling the house, and set out a pot for hot cocoa, the kind Harold used to make with real chocolate and a pinch of nutmeg. In the living room, I gathered a stack of his old adventure books, Treasure Island, The Swiss Family Robinson, their worn covers soft under my fingers, each page a memory of evenings spent reading aloud. I thought of the summer I was 15, when Clara's lies and Pastor Reynolds' violation had sent me to Dayton, my trust in pieces. My aunt had given me books then, stories that let me escape and rebuild. Stories are how we make sense of the world, she'd said, her voice steady as we turned pages. I wanted to give that to Sophia and Lucas now, a space where my stories, and theirs, could take root. Gloria stopped by at noon, her raspy laugh a burst of energy as she dropped off a jar of her homemade apple butter. For your grandkids, she said, eyeing the cookie tray. That dinner, Ellie, it still got me glowing. And Michael showing up? That's your magic at work. I smiled, stirring the cocoa. It's a start, Gloria. But today's about Sophia and Lucas. I want them to know me, not Diane's version of me. She nodded, her eyes sharp. They already do, honey. Kids see the truth. Just keep being you. Her words settled like a warm shawl, a reminder that my worth wasn't in changing Diane's mind but in the love I offered, freely and fully. When Sophia and Lucas arrived, their knock was timid, but their faces lit up as I opened the door. Sophia, at 12, was all elbows and earnestness, her hug fierce. Lucas, 9, bounced in, his eyes darting to the cookies. Grandma, it smells like Christmas, he said, and I laughed, the sound easing the last of my nerves. Diane had dropped them off, her car idling at the curb, her wave curt through the window. I didn't mind. This was my time, my space, my grandchildren. We settled in the living room, the fire crackling, the cocoa steaming in mugs. Tell us a story, Grandma, Sophia said, her voice soft but eager. One about you and Grandpa. I leaned back, the books at my side, and chose a memory instead. When your grandpa and I were young, we got lost on a hike in Hocking Hills, I began, my voice steady. It was autumn, the leaves like fire, and Harold swore he knew the trail. He didn't. Lucas giggled, and Sophia's eyes widened as I described the rain that soaked us, Harold's sheepish grin, the cave where we sheltered, sharing a soggy sandwich and dreams of our future. He said, Ellie, as long as I'm with you, I'm never really lost. And he meant it. Their faces were rapt, the story a thread connecting us across generations. Now you, I said. Tell me about Space Camp, Lucas. He launched into a tale of rocket models and stargazing, his hands waving, while Sophia shared her latest poem, her voice shy but proud. We read from Treasure Island, their voices joining mine for Jim Hawkins' adventures, and ate cookies, crumbs scattering on the rug. The afternoon unfolded like a gift, their laughter filling the house, their questions. Did Grandpa ever find treasure? Did you ever get scared? Drawing me closer. I thought of my aunt's garden, where I'd learned to grow after betrayal, and of Harold's belief in me, his dimple flashing as he called me his anchor. This was what I'd fought for, not just a dinner but moments like this, where love and stories built bridges stronger than any rejection. In my gratitude journal that night, I wrote, for Sophia's poems, for Lucas's laughter, for the stories that bind us. The practice was a lifeline, a way to name the light amidst the shadows of Diane's cruelty, of Michael's distance. I thought of Leo's note, of Gloria's apple butter, of Barbara's pride. They were all part of this tapestry, a life woven from resilience and connection. Sophia's text came as I wrote, thanks Grandma. Today was the best. Can we do it again? I replied, anytime, sweetheart. My door's always open. I stepped onto the porch, the night air crisp, Millfield stars a glittering canopy above the river. The town was still, its houses glowing like beacons, each a story of hope and survival. I thought of Harold, his hand in mine, his voice promising we'd weather any storm. You're my light, Ellie, he'd say. I was my own light now, shining through the choices I made, the people I welcomed, the stories I shared. Diane's rejection had been a wound, but it had also been a spark, igniting a Thanksgiving and now this moment with my grandchildren, proof that I could still create, still belong, still shine. Back inside, I planned the next visit, maybe a baking day, or a walk to the river with books in tow. Each idea was a thread in the life I was weaving, rich with purpose and love. The hurt of Diane's words was a faint scar, a reminder of what I'd overcome. As I climbed into bed, Fitzgerald curling at my side, I felt a peace that ran deep. This was my story, and I was writing it with every hug, every cookie, every open heart. Tomorrow, I'd keep weaving, and it would be beautiful. The days following Sophia and Lucas's visit carried a quiet radiance, as if Millfield's winter light had softened to match the warmth in my heart. The river flowed steadily, its surface catching the pale December sun, while my house on Maple Avenue settled into a gentle rhythm, the echoes of Thanksgiving and my grandchildren's laughter lingering like a well-loved song. Fitzgerald prowled the kitchen, his eyes tracking the jar of Gloria's apple butter, now a staple on my morning toast. Diane's rejection, your old stories bore everyone, was a faded mark now, its sting replaced by the vibrant reality I'd woven, a Thanksgiving of chosen family, a Saturday with Sophia and Lucas, a life reclaimed through love and resilience. Their promise to return, Sophia's text, can we do it again, was a beacon, guiding me toward a future I was eager to shape. Morning found me at the kitchen window, Harold's chipped mug warm in my hands, the cardinals at the feeders a burst of red against the frost. Millfield woke slowly, the clatter of a neighbor's shovel clearing snow, the faint jingle of bells from the bakery, the river's soft murmur beyond the sycamores. This ritual was my anchor, tying me to the girl who'd rebuilt herself after betrayal at 15, to the wife who'd cherished Harold's dimpled smile, to the woman who'd turned Diane's cruelty into a catalyst for connection. Today, it felt like a promise, to keep opening my door, to keep telling my stories, to keep growing at 70, no matter what came. I spent the morning at the community center, my watercolor class a haven of color and quiet focus. The room smelled of paint and coffee, sunlight slanting through the windows onto our easels. I was painting a portrait now, not the river but Sophia and Lucas, their faces lit by the firelight from Saturday's visit. My brush traced Sophia's earnest eyes, Lucas's mischievous grin, the warmth of their presence. "This is personal," Raymond said, pausing beside me, his voice gentle. "You're capturing love here, Eleanor." I nodded, blending ochre for Lucas's hair. "They're my heart, Raymond. I'm building something new with them." He smiled, his eyes crinkling. "You're building it with all of us." His words echoed the faith I'd carried since youth, not in a distant God, but in the power of shared moments, of lives intertwined. Back home, I began planning the next visit with Sophia and Lucas, a baking day I hoped would become a tradition. I pulled out my grandmother's recipe box, its wooden lid worn smooth, and chose her gingerbread recipe, a favorite from my childhood winters. The ingredients, molasses, cloves, brown sugar, were a promise of warmth, a way to create memories with my grandchildren. I thought of the summer I was 15, when Clara's lies and Pastor Reynolds' violation had left me hollow, sent to Dayton to heal. My aunt's kitchen had been my sanctuary, her recipes a language of love. "Food is how we hold each other," she'd said, teaching me to measure spices. I wanted to give that to Sophia and Lucas, a space where they could feel safe, seen, cherished. Maria stopped by in the afternoon, her arms full of winter greens from the community garden. "For your next gathering," she said, her smile bright. "That Thanksgiving, Ellie, it's still the talk of Millfield. You've got us all dreaming of what's next." I laughed, setting the greens on the counter. "Just a baking day with my grandkids for now, but who knows? Maybe another dinner." She hugged me, her warmth a reminder of the community I'd woven, a family not of blood but of choice. "You're a gift, Eleanor Martin," she said, and I felt tears prick my eyes, not of sadness but of gratitude for this life I was still building. Evening brought a call from Michael, his voice hesitant but warmer than before. "Mom, the kids haven't stopped talking about Saturday," he said. "They want to come again." I'm sorry things got so strained. Can we talk soon?" My heart lifted, the crack in our distance widening. "Of course, Michael," I said, keeping my tone steady. "They're welcome anytime, and so are you. Let's find a time." He paused, then added, "Thanks, Mom. For everything." The call ended, and I sat there, the weight of his words settling like a soft blanket. Diane's shadow loomed, but Michael's outreach, Sophia and Lucas's love, they were light enough to balance it. In my gratitude journal, I wrote, "For cardinal wings, for Raymond's wisdom, for Michael's step toward me, for the promise of gingerbread." The practice was a lifeline, a way to name the good amidst the echoes of past hurts. I thought of my aunt's garden, where I'd learned to trust in growth after betrayal, and of Harold's belief in me, his hand steady in mine. Diane's rejection had been a wound, but it had also been a spark, igniting a Thanksgiving that changed me, a visit with my grandchildren that grounded me, a future I could shape with love and courage. I stepped onto the porch, the night air cold, Millfield stars a glittering veil above the river. The town was still, its houses glowing like lanterns, each a story of resilience and hope. I thought of Harold, his dimpled smile, his voice calling me his light. "You're tougher than you think, Ellie," he'd say. I was proving him right, one painting, one recipe, one open door at a time. This was my story, and I was writing it with every moment of connection, every act of creation. Sophia and Lucas's visit, Michael's call, they were threads in a tapestry I'd never stop weaving, a life rich with purpose and love. Back inside, I set out the gingerbread ingredients, imagining Sophia's careful measuring, Lucas's eager stirring. I pictured their laughter, their questions, the stories we'd share, mine of Harold, theirs of school and dreams. Each plan was a choice, a refusal to be diminished. The hurt of Diane's words was a faint scar, a reminder of what I'd overcome. As I turned off the kitchen light, Fitzgerald curling at my feet, I felt a peace that ran deep. Tomorrow, I'd keep weaving, and it would be beautiful, because I was Eleanor Martin, 70 and still growing, still shining, still home.